In this video, we're going to be talking about dividing rational numbers. So what do we want to accomplish? How do you divide decimals? How do you divide fractions? And how do you divide mixed numbers? So dividing positives and negatives, recall the rules for dividing positives and negatives for integers, and they are the exact same for our rational numbers. So if the signs are the same, a positive divided by a positive or a negative divided by a negative, that quotient is going to end up positive, or your answer is going to end up positive. And if they're different signs, a positive and a negative or a negative and a positive, then the quotient is going to be negative. Just a quick review of the parts of division, or parts of the division problem. I'm going to be referring to these words throughout the video, so please make sure you know the parts of division. In a division problem, this number that is being divided is called the dividend. And then the number of groups that we are dividing it into is called the divisor. And then, of course, our answer is called the quotient. I'm going to be referring to the word divisor a couple times in this video, so make sure you write down what those are. So dividing decimals, how do you divide decimal values? Well, you're going to move the decimals in each number to the right. So we're going to increase the value of these numbers to create an equivalent division problem. We're going to move the decimal to the right until the divisor is an integer, until our divisor is a whole number and is no longer a decimal. So if you look at this problem right here, we have 6.276 divided by 1.2. What we're going to do is move the decimal to the right until our divisor, which is the 1.2, is an integer. So we're going to make this 10 times bigger by moving the decimal to the right and make that a 12. So we also have to make this 10 times bigger. We're going to move it to the right once to make it 62.76 divided by 12. These are equivalent division problems, but it's much easier when our divisor is a whole number. So now we can do this problem and get the same quotient. 62.76 divided by 12. 12 does not go into 6, but 12 will go into 62, and it goes in 5 times. 5 times 12 is 60. With a remainder of 2, bring the decimal up, bring the next number down. 12 goes into 27 2 times, and 2 times 12 is 24. And 27 minus 24 is 3. Bring the next number down, and you get 36. And 12 goes into 36 3 times, and 3 times 12 is 36. And we have no remainder left, so we're done dividing. So here is our quotient. Here is our answer, 5.23. A couple more examples here. Now we've got positives and negatives involved. Again, we're going to use our same rules for dividing with positives and negatives. This is a negative divided by a positive number, so our quotient is going to be negative. So we have to remember, make sure we put a negative on our answer when we're done, and we're going to move the decimal to the right until our divisor, the 0.24, is a whole number, and then we'd have to move the decimal 2 times to do that. So I'm going to move the decimal 2 times in the dividend as well, and this becomes negative 206.4 divided by 24. This is an equivalent division problem, and now I can divide the 206.4 is the dividend, divisor, and now I can divide. 24 does not go into 2, it does not go into 20, but it does go into 206, and it goes in 8 times, and 8 times 24 is 192, with a remainder of 14. Bring the decimal up, bring the next number down, and 24 goes into 144 6 times, and 6 times 24 is 144, so we have no remainder, so we're done dividing. And remember, our quotient was going to have to be negative because it was a negative divided by a positive, so it's negative 8.6 is our result. Next one, negative 13.65 divided by negative 2.1. My divisor, the decimal is right here. I'm going to move that one place to the right to make that a whole number, and I'm going to move the decimal one place to the right also in my dividend. So I have negative 136.5 divided by 21. This is a negative divided by a positive, so I know my quotient is going to be negative, so I need to keep that in mind when I'm done dividing. 136.5 divided by 21. 21 does not go into 1, it does not go into 13, but it does go into 136, and it goes in 6 times. 6 times 21 is 126, with the remainder of 10. Bring the decimal up, bring the next number down, and 21 goes into 105 5 times. 5 times 21 is 105 with a remainder of 0. So we are done dividing. And recall, this has to be a negative 6.5 because it was a negative. Oh, sorry, that's going to be positive. My bad. So that was a negative divided by a negative. So this is actually a positive 6.5. Sorry about that. Make sure you pay attention to positives and negatives because you can make a mistake, as I just demonstrated. That's going to be a positive 6.5 because it was a negative number divided by a negative number. How do we divide fractions? We are going to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. Now remember what that reciprocal is when we talked about multiplication. That is that mirror image, or flipping the fraction over. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor and then simplify the fraction if needed. So here's an example of 5/6 divided by 2/3. This is the divisor. 2/3 is our divisor. So we are going to find the reciprocal of 2/3, which would be 3/2. We're just going to flip that fraction over, and it becomes 5/6 times 3/2, which is 15/12, which is 1 3/12, which simplifies to 1 1/4, and we are done. So multiplying by the reciprocal of the divisor. Negative 2/3 divided by 1/6. This is equivalent to negative 2/3 times the reciprocal of 1/6, which is 6/1. Now this is a multiplication problem, so we're really just multiplying, and top times top, negative 12, bottom times bottom, thirds. Negative 12 thirds, which simplifies to negative 4, and that's our result. Next one, negative 3/4 divided by negative 1/8. I'm going to keep the first fraction the same. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of negative 1/8, and that would be negative 8/1. Top times top is positive 24. Bottom times bottom, 4. And this simplifies to 6. Dividing mixed numbers, again, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing with mixed numbers this whole time. So we're going to turn them into fractions and then multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor and then simplify if needed. So in this example, I have 8 2/3 divided by 2 2/3. As improper fractions, they are 26/3 and 8/3. And then I multiplied by the reciprocal of the 8/3, which is 3/8. And when you do that, you get 78/24, which simplifies to 26/8, which is 3 2/8, which is 3 1/4. There is our answer. So mixed numbers, yes, they take a few more steps to do, but it's going to avoid some major errors if we don't change them to improper fractions. Here's a couple examples. 9 9/10 divided by negative 2 3/4. As fractions, this is 99/10 divided by negative 11/4. And then I'm going to change this to multiplication. 99/10 times negative 4/11. Top times top, bottom times bottom gives me negative 396/110, which is negative 3 66 110, which in simplest form is negative 3 3/5. Done. Last one, negative 1 4/5 divided by negative 5/6. As improper fractions, this is negative 9/5 divided by negative 5/6. And I'm going to change this to multiplication by multiplying by the reciprocal of negative 5/6, which is negative 6/5. Just flip that fraction over. And then top times top, bottom times bottom. This gives me a positive 54/25, which is 2 4/25, and that is in simplest form. That does not simplify, and there is my result. So dividing, similar to dividing our integers, following the same rules, but again, with those fractions and mixed numbers, it takes a few more steps.